Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in bountiful Bakersfield, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we're so excited to finally have Earl Grey Anderson on the show. We've been trying this show. This is, I think, the third time for a little while. And he's going to talk about his own experiences with the men in black, or people he knows that have had the experience, I should say. If you don't know Earl, you should know Earl. He is MUFON State Director of Southern California, a MUFON STAR team member, as well as an executive committee member of MUFON's ERT, the Experiencer Resource Team. In his work with MUFON, Earl has closed a plethora of high strangeness cases, one of which was presented as one of MUFON's cases of the year at the 2021 symposium. And there's a lot more he has to offer, but I can't spend the whole show talking about it. So anyway, we really love him. We're really excited to have this show. But before we get started, Michael does have a few announcements.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our broadcast. We've got some great stuff coming up. Next week, we have Priestess of Avalon, Georgina Soretta Armstrong-Smith, and she will be talking about hedge witches. And then a very special guest at the end of the month, we have author Gary Lockman, who some of you may know better as Gary Valentine, the bass player for Blondie. Very talented lecturer and author, and he will be talking about the role of the occult plays in modern political movements. As always, get the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SAXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. It really helps us to cover our cost a little bit. But the most important thing, click like and subscribe and tell your friends about us so we can help to grow our channel. And then don't forget that the first Saturday of every month in the morning from 10 till noon Pacific, we're going to have a virtual meet and greet so you guys can spend a little time hanging out with me and Krista and getting to know us better. And so you can always RSVP for that on our website as well. So I don't want to take up too much more time because we have so much to cover with Earl. So I'm going to kick it back to you. So take it away, Krista and Earl.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And welcome, Earl.
How are you doing?
Oh,
we finally we're doing this after, a lot of, I don't know, it seemed like a lot of barricades were thrown in front of us. I know Michael and I were joking a little bit that maybe we were dealing with the men in black.
I know. I thought that too.
No, I have to say, I don't think I've ever actually met a real man in black. I guess Michael is going to show a photo, kind of a funny photo in a little bit, but I've met the men in black that Alien Con has a couple of guys that dress up like that, and they kind of like to harass people on stage sometimes, and they'll grab you from the audience once in a while and start dragging you out. And it's all in good fun, but I hope not to meet the men in black.
Well, they are a little creepy, and yeah. I think even though I would think most people know who they are from the movies, and it might be good to just maybe briefly talk about the men in black from your point of view.
Well, they go back to, the early days of ufology. I mean, in Project Blue Book, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, I know that there were some cases where people would see a UFO, and it seemed like it was more common back in the 1950s, early 1960s. It doesn't happen quite as often now, although it does happen every now and then. But people would see a UFO, or they would be, it would usually be after a UFO sighting, or if they had an anomalous experience with beings or something like that, they would get a little visit. Knock, knock, knock. And these guys are kind of tall, very pale skin usually. They are all in black, usually black trench coats, sometimes black fedora hats, sort of like the classic CIA agent that you would see in a, like a spy movie or something.
Right.
But there's some question about whether these are all human or not. Some accounts of these guys, they don't have eyebrows, they don't have facial hair. There's no, they're like hiding a bald head with a black fedoras. And there have been some cases where they've been described as having black eyes, like our visitors. So I don't know. There may be a couple of things going on. I think that some of the Men in Black visits were probably either by CIA agents or, perhaps some other alphabet organization we're not privy to. But they seem to follow UFO sightings, usually to tell people you didn't see anything, you're not going to ever mention this again, and we're watching you. Very threateningly.
There is that famous photo or video caught in the Sheraton Hotel in the spring of 2009 that's really fascinating in terms of the not looking human in the images. And this was in near Niagara Falls, Niagara Falls, New York. And they don't look human when you see the close-up of it.
Do we have that photo? Maybe you want to post that up there. Yeah. I can read about the case here if you'd like me to.
Sure.
Well, it was back 2000 and 2009, where apparently two men in black entered a hotel in Niagara Falls. It was following a UFO sighting. Now, there were two hotel employees who described a craft that they had witnessed. It was 240 feet long, 3 lights, 1 light to each side, a pulsing red light in the middle of the object. And they observed the UFO for about 10 minutes. It slowly and silently flew about 500 feet elevation from east to west over Niagara's Horseshoe Falls towards their hotel. Apparently, the craft, it did shine a light down. White light was directed towards the water, and as they observed the craft, the light beam shifted direction and aimed directly at the two witnesses, and this scared the hell out of them. Well, it was about a week later, the hotel manager was alone in the hotel parking lot at 1 a.m. when he noticed another black triangle flying in the same direction, but at a much higher altitude. Shortly after, it was not that shortly after, 7 months after the two sightings, the hotel employees reported a disturbing experience when two men who looked and dressed identically in black trench coats with hats entered the hotel lobby and asked to speak with the hotel manager. They approached the hotel bellman, who told the two strange-looking men that the manager was not working that day. The bellman said that the two men appeared to not believe him and began walking towards the hotel looking for the manager. When the bellman returned for some work tasks, the two men were gone. I actually have a classic black triangle here. You can actually buy a plastic model and build one yourself. That doesn't fly or anything, but that's the classic configuration. I have so many black triangle reports that I've had from aerospace engineers to police officers who have reported these things. Some say they're our UFOs. I do have one, a rocket scientist friend who was driving down Pacific Coast Highway in a convertible, showing off his new convertible to his dad, and one of these, it flew directly over them. He said it was perfectly silent, headed out towards the ocean, and it just kept flying until it disappeared into the vanishing point. And some say that we build these things. In fact, I had one rumor that Lockheed was involved. I actually took a film crew out to Plant 42 in Palmdale once. And I didn't meet the men in black there, okay? But it was a film crew from the Italian version of Nightline. And they wanted to go to Area 51. I said, well, that's not exactly a day trip, you guys. They wanted to go to hot spots, right? So took them to Topanga Canyon, where we have lots of sightings, lots of abductions reported from. I took them to the shore to show them the area where the Tic Tac was seen. which is sort of between Seal Beach and Catalina Island, right directly, like equilaterally between the shore, the mainland, and the shore of Catalina. And then I took him to Plant 42 in Palmdale, because there's no driving out to Area 51, from there in one day.
Sure.
So we went to Plant 42, and we were talking a little bit about that. And I had one guy say that he couldn't tell me, but he hinted that they built, it is called the TR-3B, apparently. The rumor is that the Navy commissioned these, that it does use an electromagnetic, highly electrified, the Biefeld Brown effect, they call it, where if you electrify a core of spinning mercury, that this can actually give you some lift. It's a lifting body. And but anyway, this rocket engineer, he's not into UFOs. He does believe in them, but this is the only one he's ever seen. His attitude was, well, I believe that this was one of ours. In fact, if you give me a team and a budget, I'll whip one out for you in a couple of months.
Wow.
So, and he is a serious guy.
Sure. I wonder if the Russians have them too then.
I don't know. I mean, I would guess that they're trying to follow us in whatever we're doing. If we have something, they probably do. But anyway, but these guys that came and pestered the bellman and the hotel manager, it doesn't sound, their description, they didn't have any hair on the face. There was no eyebrows. They were just perfectly pale, black trench coats, black fedora hats. That's straight out of like a Humphrey Bogart movie or something.
Absolutely.
Sort of out of place time-wise.
Well, and it seems like if you listen to other people talk about this topic, there does seem to be almost this, consistent opinion that there are different types of men in black, and that there is that one that you're describing that some have even described look like living corpses because of the paleness and just how they don't look real. Then others they look like, CIA agents, or there are even people that think now that some of them are regular looking in their dress. They don't all dress in Men in Black anymore, maybe because we all know that they would do that. But there does seem to be that opinion that there's more than one type of Men in Black, and but that they do seem to appear when there's either UFO sighting, or you have also a lot of research yourself, it sounds like, or something, you're onto something, they may appear. Yeah.
And I think some of that may be, one of our agencies. It sounds like CIA stuff, but it might be a 3-letter organization we're not aware of. I mean, there are those. I'm going to share one interesting story. It's probably my only Men in Black case, although I don't know. We have one right now that we're working on where a little girl had visitation experiences that were quite disturbing. I'm not going to actually go into her case, but it was at a school, and after she had this contact episode that was not a pleasant one, she was visited by a man in black. He was wearing a black suit, and I don't know that he had the hat, but everything else was pretty much in a line to that. And she was, ordered to never talk about it, never talk about it. And she lived with that for many years. And now, I believe she's in her late 20s or so. And she came forward and put in a report. One of my field investigators is doing that investigation now, and that might be a man in black right there. Kind of goes along with the usual meme, but it's like the the John Mack case in Rwanda that where all the children saw craft, and so. Well, they were visited by, guys that were supposedly from the military, but again, they were dressed in the black suits and told them to not talk about it. You didn't see anything. Happened at the Westall School sighting, where a whole playground of children saw UFO back in 1966, I believe it was 66, and they were visited by what apparently were American. They spoke English and with American accents, but again, they were very stern and strict, and the black suits, and the tie, and all that, and told never to repeat their stories again. So, this is a recurring meme.
I saw the one about, I forget which one it was, the children in the playground. I don't know, it was the first one you mentioned. I saw it on a documentary, and it was really mind-blowing. I mean, how could all those children be making it up? And
I know.
And it was in the daytime, and it was, I mean, it's like, you could see maybe one child having a big imagination, and that's fair, but it was impressive. I was impressed by that.
Yeah. Well, these guys, in this the Sheraton Niagara Sheraton case, it's weird because I mean there is a video, and there's close-ups of them, and the report was that they did not look human, but yet the black triangles I hear are probably ours. I mean, I had one case where a guy saw one near. In fact, this is why I took the Italian film crew to Plant 42 in Palmdale, because I had a case of one engineer. He's working on. He was already working on Air Force projects, but he was working late, and he saw the stars were blotted out ahead of him. He was driving on this dark highway that's next to the Plant 42. And he stopped his car, and he watched a triangular craft fly right over him. The same description, the little light on each corner. He said it was perfectly silent, that you could sort of feel like when it was directly over him, he felt uncomfortable, like there was sort of a vibration that he felt in his body. And this thing went right over to where the gate was, and he said it landed like a feather. He watched this land behind the Lockheed Skunk Works gate at Plant 42. So, and I've asked some people from Lockheed, and what I usually get is my wife is actually married to this woman who her husband is a mucky muck at Lockheed. He works at Plant 42. He works at the Colorado facility, and he works in Port Hueneme. And I asked him about the triangles, and he said, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. And that's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard that a couple of times. So it's my guess. I think that may be our UFO. I mean, I do believe that we've been trying to reverse engineer crash materials. I mean, and all of that, the David Grush, and, he told Congress.
Right.
So far, the whistleblowers have come out, but the guys the gatekeepers, I don't know. They haven't come forward yet. I think Chuck Schumer, he wrote the transparency bill. It was sort of rendered toothless by a couple of senators, and lo and behold, their main fundraisers were Lockheed Martin. So maybe that's kind of what's going on. They I don't think they want to give up the technology. I don't think they want to even admit we have it. Well,
I could kind of see that, but I don't know. It seems like also a lot of the secrecy is just a sort of a mind game or power trip, or
power trip.
They think that we're all babies and can't handle it. And meanwhile, the genie is out of the bottle more and more, because people can take their own pictures, and there's more and more information that you can spread. They can't keep track of it. That's probably why the Men in Black don't visit as much. They'd have to visit so many people. It's like, how would they? It's
true. You have a point there. You have a point. Back in the 1950s, well, you had the flying saucer craze going on.
Yeah.
And 1952, we had the, 2 times in 1 week, the White House was overflown by a little fleet of flying saucers. They got radar hits off of these. They scrambled fighter jets after them. After this, they convened what they called the Robertson panel. At the Robertson panel, the question in hand was, how are we going to deal with all these people that are reporting these things? We don't want the public to know. And they decided, and you can read FOIA requests have gone out, and we the documents are out. We know how they reacted. They said, we'll deal with them using ridicule. We'll trot out our best scientists, and we'll have them talk about, these people are seeing things, or they're crazy, or they're making it up, or misidentifying stuff would be like the nice way of dealing with them, but mostly through ridicule. And this has been going on for years. It's just this manipulative, between threatening and ridiculing people in public, ruining careers and such. That's the mode that they've used. But I like you were saying, I think the genie is out of the bottle now. They should at least give us something at this point.
Make it easier for everybody too, and they could still keep some of their secrets, because they would anyway. So I can understand military secrets, but the rest I don't really understand. It doesn't. The
X-15 was misidentified quite often, apparently, as a UFO when they were flying it, and so was the SR. What was it? The SR-21. It looks like it was straight out of Buck Rogers. But that was Lockheed, of course. And we didn't know that they had that. They built that in 1963, and it was a rocket jet that they used it because they could fly it over Russia and get photos, and Russia couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't shoot it down. It was at too high of an altitude. So and they didn't let us know that we had that until I think 1991. I was at the Edwards Air Force Base open house, and they had an air show, and they landed that amazing Buck Rogers looking plane. It was beautiful, but it didn't exist. So eventually, they come clean with the public about what they have. But now these triangle sightings, they've been having them for a long time. I mean, the first one I got is 1975, a family in Venice, California, having a barbecue, and the whole family saw this thing fly over. Looked like a prototype. It didn't have the lights on the corners yet. It seemed to have this indentation in the middle, like it was an early prototype. But now the mom is in her 90s, and I interviewed the two brothers and the mom, and the mom's cute. It's like, oh, did my boys tell you about our UFO sighting? And it's like, yeah. So I would guess, I would think the men in black that they would send out after a black triangle sighting would probably be, our agents. But this sounds like aliens. So it's very weird. I don't know. Are we working in tandem with aliens?
That is a question.
Are they hybrids?
Is that possible? Maybe that would be possible. That would make sense that they could appear too.
Anything's possible, I guess.
Well, that's what we're learning. And I think in this Pluto and Aquarius age, it's going to blow our minds the next 20 some years with everything coming out that does come out.
I mean, I think disclosure pretty much happened. It didn't come through the government. It was, the video of the Tic Tac and the pilots coming forward. And, 2017, the front page of the New York Times was saying that UFOs were real. And that's New York Times. Leslie Kane, she wrote the article with Ralph Blumenthal, I think was the co-author. Yeah. And I think that is really what raised everybody's eyebrows, and people kind of knew this was more than just people seeing stuff and imagining things or misidentifying airplanes and stuff. So when you have something that's going at Mach 18 times the speed of sound, perfectly silent, doesn't have any visible means of propulsion that we know about, shaped like a Tic Tac. Tic Tac candy. No surface features.
Bizarre. Just
two little projections on the bottom. Looked like antenna or something. That was it. And other than that, you buy a packet of Tic Tac candies. That's your model. It looked exactly like that.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything that can. This apparently came out of the ocean into the air. and it was capable of going into space. So that's the transmedium thing that we look for in UFOs, and it's so common about them. It seems like water resistance doesn't matter to them. They just can go directly into the waters at high speed. And if we did that, well, you know, I mean, a passenger jet hits the ocean. Usually people don't survive.
Yeah.
It's like hitting cement. It's the surface tension. But these craft seem to ignore that. So I think that was disclosure when it happened. I'm surprised that people are still being pestered, still being given a hard time about it. I think that, you know, the Jack in the Box is popped open. Pandora is out of her box. I don't think that it would surprise people, but boy, it's like it's difficult. They really don't want to let go of this information.
Yeah,
they're just holding on to it to the last second.
Now you have you do have a case that you have about someone else having an experience of Men in Black that you haven't shared before. So we'd love to hear that story.
Sure. Well, now this was a case I got a little over a year ago. The gentleman, I can't give you much information on him because he could get into horrible problems. He's got like 200 aerospace engineers that work under him. He works for a major aerospace company, which I won't name. Doesn't mean I didn't name them already, but actually he works for a different company other than Lockheed. But anyway, he reported a couple of things. I have an interview with him that went on for about 2.5 hours, and I got permission from him to record it. And according to him, well, as a child, he was an Air Force brat. And so his dad they would have to move to different Air Force bases when he was a little kid. And when he was about 4 years old, he was mentioning that near Edwards Air Force Base, his father was going to his new commission there, and the father and the mother and this gentleman, who's now a little bit older than me, they saw a 200-foot across flying disc. It was a classic flying saucer. This thing was hovering a little bit off of the road. That was about 100 feet away from them. The mom was scared to death. The father just kept his composure, and he said, you know, we see this all the time here. They never threaten us. They never do, you know, it just seems like they're observing what we do. So we're not at risk. And they drove right past the UFO. It was still hanging there in the air because he had to get to his new commission over at Edwards. So this was his first encounter with this phenomena when he was 4. Now he got a hold of MUFON to tell us that a year after that, as a child, he woke up and there was a classic gray alien standing there at the foot of his bed. And this sort of began a series of occasional visits that he had through his whole life with our visitors. You know, with these guys. I have visual aids today. With these guys.
Gray alien with the
classic
blue suit.
Black eye gray alien. So, you know, he told me about this, but in the course of talking about his UFO sighting when he was a child and how he was still occasionally being visited by ETs, he went into the Air Force in 1969, following his father's footsteps. He wasn't planning on doing that, but he was afraid he was going to get drafted. So he went and he enlisted into the Air Force. And he wound up going to Vietnam, and he was honored with a medal when he left. Well, he didn't leave the Air Force. He actually rejoined, and so he came back stateside. And he told me this story about how the job that he had was on a train that used to take ICBM missiles across country to the various bases where they had the missile ICBM facilities. You know, they'll have a capsule that's underground, and you have your line of ICBMs, nuke-tipped missiles. So this is Cold War stuff, heart of the Cold War, 1971 when this happened. They would have, he and another gentleman were the security for this train, and it would have a couple of train cars. And he said that the way that they would transport these missiles, it looked like big cigar tubes because they had to keep it at a certain temperature. Everything had to be maintained for the missile's integrity so they could deliver it to the base and it'd be exactly as it had left the factory that had built them. Well, on the way to this, it was, I believe, Montana is where they were headed to. The train had to stop. It had like a stop, and it was this little town. There wasn't much there. There's just like a quickie mart that they could see it. It was like 1 a.m, and there was nothing going on. It was quiet. There were 2 guards, and so he decided that he was going to be bad and jump off the train and go run off and buy a 6-pack of beer and bring it back for him. And that's what he did. So he went, he wasn't gone long, 10, 15 minutes. He came back and there had been an incident while he had left. They had this guy that they used to call him Smokey because he would wear a Smokey the Bear kind of hat, but they believed he was a CIA agent that was working, that would travel along with the train, but they never would see him. Well, he's standing outside the train and there were 2 dead bodies lying by the train.
Whoa.
He had just shot these 2 guys. Well, a couple years ago, he finally found out he had somebody that was able to open the file for him. And it turned out that these guys were 2 Russian agents and they were trying to sabotage this missile. And apparently they did something. Because he said that the container that the missile was in, that it had the smoke coming from it. These guys, they were engineers. They knew how to maintain the integrity of the missiles as they were in transport. Everything seemed to be okay, but there was something wrong. So they had to figure out what was going on. So they diverted this train to this very remote track. He said that they took it to a roundhouse. And they diverted tracks. And he said that the new track, it didn't go near any roadways. It was just very, very, very remote where this ran through. And they're still accompanying these missiles on this train. Well, there was this facility in the middle of a forest. And he might have mentioned Kentucky. I'm not going to give any specifics because I don't want to get into trouble. I think you might have been kind of breaking some NDAs telling me what he told me. In fact, it didn't even wind up in the report because I don't want the guy to wind up getting a visit,
Sure.
being sent to prison or anything. But anyway, well, this is why I'm very much so keeping this guy anonymous. But he said that it was the middle of a forest. There was no indication of any base or anything. He said that the train came to a stop. And suddenly there were 200 troops that were gathered around the train. And there were guys who were in charge, and they were in black suits, the black hat, the black tie. He said that it was like the classic Men in Black. Well, they checked out the missile containers. They gave the okay, everything was safe. The missile was it kept its integrity. It wasn't going to explode or anything.
Right.
So they opened this gate, and he said that this facility, that it was completely forested around there. There were no roads in, no roads out. The only way in was this train track. Either that or probably a helicopter could bring people in, and that would be the only mode that you could get into this base. He said that this chain link fence, it was the biggest fence he's ever seen. He said it was so tall, there's no way to really scale this thing, highly guarded. The soldiers opened the gate and the train went through. The train tracks went right up to these 2 buildings. Now, you can't find them on Google Maps. They don't show up. So he tried. He said he knew pretty much where the coordinates were. It just shows forest. You don't see anything.
Right.
But there were two large buildings. He said they looked like office buildings, about 6 stories tall, in the middle of a forest. He's being accompanied by these very quiet, very kind of brooding guys in these black suits. He said that they just kept on coming. There were quite a few of them. There's a bunch, and they were in charge of this base. So they had the train. The train kept on going because they had facilities there where they could check the missile out, check out its integrity. And he said that they were at this facility for about 2 weeks or so. Well, they were led into the main building, and he said that there were around 200 women at typewriters. Remember, it's 1971, so it's not computers. It sounds like a secretarial pool or something that they had there, which makes me think one of the buildings had to have been like a barracks and living quarters. Had to have been.
Right.
You know, these people aren't going home at the end of their shift. So, and my mom, you know, you probably know the story about that. I mean, she worked in an underground facility, and it was the same thing, that you'd go down there and you'd spend some time down there. It's not like you'd be going up and down, and these guys weren't leaving. So a large coterie of secretaries, and then these guys in black suits. And he said they all looked the same, kind of pale, you know, well, they're probably indoors all the time.
Yeah. That makes sense.
He didn't say they looked like aliens, but just they didn't identify themselves. They didn't show any kind of identification, but they were clearly in charge, and they were in charge of the military and everything that was going on there, and the nuclear missiles. So anyhow, he got kind of debriefed there. They questioned him, and at the end of the debrief, they sent him home after it was a couple of weeks wait. And he said that that was the very last time that they had him work as security on one of these missile trains.
Oh.
He'd done it a few times, and usually it would go directly to the base, you know, Minot base, or, you know, any one of those where we have an ICBM facility at. North Dakota has one, you know. Anyway.
That's a great story. I wonder if that facility is still there.
Can't find it on Google Maps. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think is hidden from us, and they hide it, you know, the satellite views and all that. And the airspace around it too. He said that the airspace around this, that there was no overflights of the area. Now, I don't know if they could keep anything like that secret now because of the spy satellites everybody has.
That's true.
It might have been, it was probably an issue even then.
They could have haven't they invented a cloaking ability? I remember years ago, I don't know how good it is yet, but they were working on being able to cloak things completely, just like in Harry Potter.
Yep.
I do remember
I've
something
heard that.
about that.
There's a good book about that. It's called Camelio by Robert Guffey. And it talks about the military's cloaking abilities that we have, that uses like a back projection. What it does is it films what's behind you, and it projects it onto your front, but in such high definition that it looks like the person's not there, like the Invisible Man.
Right.
And I've heard that they can do that with a full airplane, and that was a long time ago. I mean, I've got a story of a guy who was in the Navy, and they took, you know, some of the recruits onto the deck of the aircraft carrier they were stationed on, and they had them stand back from, you know, the flight path, and they heard a jet come in, and they felt the afterburners. It was hot, and they saw the dust rising up from the deck, but there was nothing there. There was nothing there.
Oh wow! And
but after the afterburners shut off, and the jet engine stopped whining, they said, "Okay, you're dismissed." Apparently wanted to get the reaction of these guys.
Testing it out.
I got, I have a few other stories that are similar. It always seems to be around the military.
Yeah, well, I could see that. There might be something to that, I would say. I'm sure they're trying to do it. If they succeed, I don't know, but I could see why they'd want to do it. Now, going back to your the person that you spoke to and interviewed, did he ever get abducted or anything that he remembers? You said he had visitations.
He thinks that he was abducted as a child, and he thinks that it may have happened into adulthood, but he's not sure. But he remembers the entity in his room, and it happened in his childhood. It's happened in his adulthood. And this is a guy who, you know, he's working on highly classified projects right now for our military. So, you know, you've got to kind of look at the provenance of the person who's telling you the story.
Sure.
And that was 2.5 hours where he was talking. You know, he told me about his childhood experiences about seeing the UFO. I mean, that's really what got into the report, and his visitation.
Right.
But I wasn't going to talk about the facility and the nuclear stuff because he could get in trouble. I could even get in trouble. You know, I think that was probably, so I'm not giving names, not giving places, but that's kind of the bones of the story. Wow. I have to keep the main details.
Sure. No, I respect that. You know, it's a great story, and it does seem, when it's coming from somebody that's inside, it does give it that legitimacy. Not that people outside shouldn't be given, but it just makes it more like, gives it credit, you know. And why would they do that? I mean, there are probably others that don't do it because they really don't want to be jeopardizing their career, or people are going to still think they're crazy, even though it's becoming definitely more accepting since the congressional hearings. And then, like you said, the New York Times is like, now that it's going into the mainstream media as legitimate stories, that ridicule is going away around UFO, that part. So they're not going to be able to use that as much, really, if at all, to tell you the truth. I don't think people would care. It's like, go ahead. Because
I think the other trolls out there still that'll try to get the ridicule going. You see it on, you know, X, formerly Twitter. You know, you step into their UFO threads and it can get pretty combative. And you got the skeptics. Mick West is one who's from the UK who I actually, you know, I tried to do a live debate with him over Zoom, and he refused. He refused to do it. So I'm willing to go, you know, toe to toe with these guys that are the debunkers out there. But we still have them, you know, they're still out there.
Yeah.
I think they still use ridicule. They use threats. They have their processes of keeping their secrets. With my mom, I mean, she is who told me that this whole phenomenon is real. She told me in 1963 when I was 5. That's why I listen to stories that people tell me from their childhood, because that's where my origin in ufology really started. And she worked in an underground base, and she told me about, she said that UFOs and alien life in the universe is a very real thing, that we know that. We've already been contacted. But they will never, ever, ever tell the public. And she doubled down on that. You know, we talked about it. 1977, after seeing Star Wars, she started talking again. And, you know, Star Wars, it's realer than you will ever know, son. It's so not far-fetched, the different craft, the different beings, but they will never, ever, ever tell the public. And at that point, I asked her, I said, well, why the hell not? You know, why not? That's one of those eternal questions. Is there God? What happens when we die? And, you know, are we alone in the universe? And her answer was that they're afraid of how people will react, that they'll react badly. She brought up the War of the Worlds, Orson Welles radio broadcast, that people reacted badly to it. And it sounded to me like she was reiterating something that she was told.
Right.
That she was repeating something that she was either told to tell people or that she was told when she asked them. And she, you know, she kept her NDAs till the day she died. She needed them to do her work. She worked as a, you know, a headhunter for all the, you know, major, you know, the military industrial complex, Lockheed, Northrop, Bell Laboratories, all those you know, all those guys. That was my mom. Rockwell.
That's pretty cool.
You know, she, yeah. And, you know, I mean, she never recanted on what she told me. But when I was a kid, you know, I went and gave a little lecture in 4th grade. I told my mom's story, and yeah, the teacher did a parent teacher conference with her, and I got a little bit of a rebuke there. She told me, son, you can't ever talk about this ever again. How did you remember that? You were only 5, and I'm not supposed to tell anybody. Your mom could go to prison. I had to say that you have a wild imagination, but I want you to know you weren't lying. I know you weren't lying, but I had to tell your teacher that you made that up, because I could go to prison if you mention that to people, because people don't know about UFOs, and they certainly don't know about little cities under the desert. So anyway, those are the guys she worked for. I never got a visit from the Men in Black. Although when my mom passed away, her house burnt down mysteriously.
Oh, that's weird.
So maybe somebody was trying to get rid of evidence. I don't know.
That she had. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if
I think she worked for one of the agencies, but I don't know which. But I mean, her security clearances were so up through the rafters that, I mean, she worked on all these high pressure, secretive jobs. She couldn't tell us where she was going. Okay, one instance it was before the first Gulf War. She was gone for 2 months. We'd have to go to my parents' house to get a phone call. Once a week she could call. Very bad, distant, long distance phone call. This is, back with landlines, early 1990, I guess. And she came back, and her suitcase was filled with headscarves, Saudi gold jewelry, and sand. So I figured it didn't take a genius to figure it out. I said, Mom, obviously you're in the Middle East. And she did cop to, she said, well, I can't tell you where I was, but it was through work. I had a little security detail, and I could go, they'd take me out to the marketplace and stuff. But that, I was working, son. I can't tell you what I was doing. A week later, the first Gulf War started. So I don't know what she was involved in there. But knowing the people she worked for, she was, maybe the F-117 or something. I think that was what they used for the shock and awe. Was that secretive plane back then. So maybe she was involved in that. I don't know, though.
Wow.
Never will.
Mystery mother. It's very cool on some level, but probably a little frustrating, especially when you got involved and wanted to know more, and you realized that she did know more.
Oh, she knew a lot. And she had to keep her lips zipped. I mean, every once in a while, I'd get like another little kernel of information from her. But this is why I do what I do.
Sure.
She passed away in 1999, and I knew after that, that information wasn't going to be coming around. I'd bug her about stuff, and once in a while I'd get a little bit more. I mean, I brought up the Bob Lazar story. I said, Mom, it sounds like one of the guys that you would get out somewhere, because she sent out a friend of mine who was a mathematical genius who was gone for a month. And I later found out that they sent him out to a Northrop computer facility. And I'm pretty darn sure that it was an underground facility that they call the Ant Hill. It's in Tehachapi.
Oh, near us.
I might have some knocks on my door here, but that's a pretty well-known one now. It's supposedly secret still, but I mean, I even know, they call it Tejon Ranch. It's got a
oh yeah, I remember the sign.
Yeah, we've heard about that one, and it's apparently has like 20 levels underground, but their computer system had bugs in it. And so she sent this friend of mine. It was my math teacher's son, who was kind of a crazy genius kid. And he had not been to college yet. He had just gotten out of high school, but he could look at a row of numbers and tell you which one was out of place. So when he got back from my mom's employ, he came back with a real nice car and a wad of cash. And he said, well, you want to see what I did for your mom? I'll show you. And he went inside, he was still living with his mom. He went inside and he came out with an old stack of computer readouts, right? You know, they're all connected. It goes flop, 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 flop. The green and the white and the little lines across. And there are all these numbers all the way down. And he goes riffling through all these. And there was one that he had circled in an orange grease pencil. He said, that put Northrop at a standstill for 2 months. They couldn't run their computer systems. It just messed them up. They threw scientists at it, threw all kinds of people and technicians at it. It took me about a month, but I was finally able to find the number that was messing it all up, and they reprogrammed the thing, and now it runs like a charm. And so I'm back. Do you like my car? I guess they paid him well.
Wow, that's really cool. That's a great.
So the Men in Black thing. I mean, this is my guess, and all we can do here is hypothesize, right? Because we don't have any hard, solid evidence for who they are, who they're working for. They seem to come around with UFO stuff or nuclear stuff, which the UFOs are obviously interested in. So many incursions over our ICBM bases by UFOs. Talked to my friend Robert Salas or David Schindley about that. They both had 10 missiles shut down in their ICBM facilities back in the 1960s after a UFO hovered over them. Robert Salas was there, a capsule, when it happened.
Wow.
This UFO sent some kind of a beam down in there, and it took these 10 missiles offline. They weren't easily fixable. They had to go and pull them out, probably send them to that facility that the train goes to, maybe, to have technicians work on them. And but Bob says that the radio was still working, the computer system was still working, the air and the lights and everything. So it wasn't like an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP. That could knock a missile out of commission. That's not what happened. It was something that was directed directly at the warheads themselves. So, that's obviously our visitors. They don't like our nukes. And experiencers, that's one of the messages that people are left with. The people are shown possible futures where there's a nuclear exchange and it's the end of civilization. And, military men will be crying after this kind of a contact event. A few people, I've heard the story over and over again, where they're shown what could happen if a nuclear exchange happened, and it's nothing good.
Yeah,
we don't survive. We don't survive.
That's happened in dream work too, where I forget what the experiment was with ordinary people, and there would be different scenarios of the future that these people would see, some good and some bad. And it does seem like, from my research into psychic stuff and dreams, that we are able to see the future. Many people, it's not just one or two people. It's just a lot of people don't believe what they see, and that choice, that we have these choices to make. But it's interesting then, does that mean if somehow the Men in Black are showing up to sort of prevent certain things, are they ultimately helpful if it's connected to shutting down nuclear disasters? That's what's interesting about them. Are they helpful? Are they not? They definitely freak people out, it seems like. I haven't read any accounts where they're like, hey, it's the Men in Black, yay.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, now I was pulled out of the Alien Con dance that they had at the end of the day by two men in black. There's a photo I shared with Michael earlier. It's pretty funny. I'm holding a beer, and these two guys, kind of spooky looking guys are dragging me out of the Alien Con where they had their little dance party at. But those are the only Men in Black I've met. Are they aliens? Are they hybrids? I think it's probably a combination. I think some of them are probably working for the CIA. Some are working for some other three-letter agency that we're not privy to. And I think that then they're the ones that are weird, where they don't look human. Are ETs actually working with humans to keep disclosure from happening?
There's even a few accounts I have read or heard actually on a YouTube show about Men in Black of some few women That, and I guess their descriptions are more frightening. Like one was vampiric looking, the pale, I guess the pale thing, and I don't know, but I thought, well, that's interesting. I think at this day and age, with women involved in the military and CIA, there would be some women here and there as well.
Well, let's think about disclosure for a second. Now, if ET wanted to disclose, they could, couldn't they? I mean, they could just fly, they could do an Independence Day kind of, put a, UFO over every major city and it wouldn't be a question. Although people would probably say it was holograms and a false flag. I don't know. Everybody's paranoid anymore, maybe with good reason. But I think that they could disclose if they wanted to. So maybe some of these men in black that look like aliens are aliens, and they are trying to tamp down disclosure. It wouldn't surprise me, because so far, I mean, I don't know that the ETs definitely are. I don't think they think we're ready for it ourselves. We're not ready for prime time. I think a lot of abductions and things like that, they're kind of ramping up. It seems it's more common, or maybe people are just more comfortable sharing about their experiences.
That's true.
But it seems like to me like they've kind of ramped up, and it's usually they're given that anti-nuclear, save your planet. People are told three things. I call it the trifecta of telepathic messages. Nuclear war is evil. Don't try it. You won't survive it. Number two is stop treating your planet like it's replaceable and like you can just go somewhere else and start over again. It's not like that. And then number three is you guys need to better yourselves. Technology is way up here, and spiritually you're like barbaric. You're still like we act like the primates that we evolved from is still,
That's
with
true.
our own wars.
It's gotten worse, I think. I don't know, since I've been born, I think Michael and I talk about, we think that consciousness is not raising. It's not. We're going backwards. And just because the information is more available, easier to get, and there's so much great information, doesn't mean people are actually utilizing it, or they haven't worked on their ego enough. They use it for themselves only, or from sort of a vanity point of view. So those are good messages. And it
doesn't sound like an evil, invasion to me. I mean, as far as I know, no extraterrestrial has ever threatened doomsday to humanity, but we do it to each other all the time. North Korea and Russia, they've apparently sent up some sort of nuclear device, is the rumor, into orbit. That's not good. So I hope that the aliens ramp up even more. Humanity needs to change. And it seems like they're doing it one person at a time. It seems like it's slow and methodical, but all the people I know that I meet that have had ET contact, it can be seemingly malign or seemingly benevolent. Usually it's somewhere in the middle, but they're all changed by it. And doesn't matter what their political stripe is, their religious background, they all get those same three messages, and it seems to enhance the person and opens them up, and they find these spiritual gifts that they didn't have before. Empathy, synchronicities. That's what I experienced. Synchronicities, like these little miracles that are meaningful coincidences, and it's almost like connect the dots. I know I'm on the right path if I experience these synchronicities, and that's the gift that I was left with. These are all good things that people are left with. So let's hope that humanity can change and that we don't destroy ourselves, and hopefully we can be spacefaring like our visitors are someday.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're ready now. Seems to be the message.
I think you may be right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We've so enjoyed it. We're glad we accomplished it, got through the barriers. So
I try again.
There you go.
3 times the charm, I think. There you go. So, well, I love you guys. I enjoy, being on your show. I'm always happy to come back.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And thank you all for listening in. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together. Have a magical and cosmic week.